Alright, the next installment of our EOC study guide from Chapter 1 is the scientific method. Overall, I'm not too concerned about this. I think most of you have a pretty good handle on it. Make sure you can outline the main steps of the scientific method. The elements of controlled experiments may trip you up a little bit, so I'll spend some more time there. And you guys have become quite good at dishonesty and bias in science. So, not that you're good at doing it, but you're good at identifying it. 7 common steps of the scientific method: observation, research, hypothesis and prediction, experiment, analyzing and collecting your data, drawing conclusion, and then sharing those ideas. So observations, the process of obtaining information by using the senses. You guys are pretty good at this. It's the start of the scientific method. Research, we haven't done a lot of this in class. Perhaps we'll do that after the EOC. We'll see. But research is a verb. It's a systematic investigation. Moving on. Hypothesis. Let's go over this one. A hypothesis is an idea or explanation based on your observations and or research that can be tested. The key thing to remember about a hypothesis is that it must be testable. At the beginning of the year, you had some confusion in the difference between a hypothesis and prediction, in which case I'm going to say just forget about the prediction. Focus your efforts on the hypothesis. And again, it needs to be testable. Here's an example. You notice some flower petals turning brown in the bouquet from your sweetheart. Do the petals get water from the vase like the stems do? So, what is your hypothesis? Your hypothesis is either that the flower petals do receive water from the vase or that the flower petals do not receive water from the vase. One is kind of positive in its nature. We don't include the not, so that's the one you go with. All right? So you set up your experiment. It's a procedure, controlled conditions, to discover, demonstrate, or test a fact, theory, or general truth. A controlled experiment is what we're concerned with most often. This has a control group that can be compared with an experimental group and has only one variable. So here are the elements of a controlled experiment. You have a control group, an experimental group, an independent variable, and a dependent variable. This is all coming back, isn't it? So, let's talk about the control group. As an experimental setup that provides a normal standard against which the experimental group can be compared. So, if I were to propose the hypothesis that chewing gum during a test can increase test scores, what would my normal standard be? Hopefully you're thinking it would be a group of kids who are not chewing gum. My experimental group then would be a group of kids that are chewing gum. So, let's go back to how do we test if flower petals receive water. Our control group would be what? What are the normal conditions for that bouquet given to you by your sweetie? The control group would be just flowers and ordinary clear water. We're going to choose white flowers, and our experimental group then would be to put blue food coloring in the water. This will tell us if the petals turn blue, then the water is actually reaching the petals. If they don't turn blue, then water actually isn't reaching the petals. It's probably just going up somewhere in here where the sepal is and then stops. Now, we've got some things here that we need to talk about. So we have our clear water and our blue water, and we have our white flowers. The independent variable is the one that you change on purpose. In this case, between the control group and the experimental group, what have we changed on purpose? Hopefully you said the color of the water. So what is the dependent variable? The dependent variable is the factor or the thing that we're looking for that would be a result that depends on the color of the water. What would depend on the color of the water? Hopefully you said the color of the flower. If you need to hear that again, please go back and play it again. If you have more questions, be sure to bring them up in class. Analyzing data. You guys are pretty good at reading charts and graphs. We've been doing that all year. The goal of analyzing your data is to determine if it's reliable. Look for support for your hypothesis, things like that. How you analyze, there's a list of steps, but I don't think you're going to need that, so let's skip on. Drawing conclusions, you use your data. Proven or not proven, I don't think you're going to need this stuff, so let's skip through. You can pause it and read over it if you'd like. So, in our carnation example, the control, the plain water, stayed white. The experimental group with blue water turned blue. So our hypothesis was that flower petals do receive water from the vase. Our conclusion? Because the petals on the carnation in blue food coloring turned blue, the color of the water, we can conclude that our hypothesis is supported by our data. Make sure we didn't say proven, because there could have been some other reason that they turned blue. It would take a little bit more experimenting to say proven. And there we go. Inferences are one thing that you're going to need to know just in general to help you answer questions better on the test. An inference is a conclusion made based on the facts and previous knowledge rather than on direct observation. So here are facts. Okay, this guy's wet. He got hit by a water balloon. An inference that we can make is that they're playing a game. This is not a 3D movie, so we don't know for certain that they're playing a game, but we can make an inference because he's smiling and he's also holding a water balloon, which are facts, that they're in fact playing a game. So that's an inference because we're not directly observing them playing a game, we just have a picture. And remember, a hypothesis is something that is testable. We can't really test whether or not they're playing a game. It's a picture. So make sure you know the difference. In our example, an inference would be the blue food coloring travels through the vascular system of the plant. A hypothesis would be other colors, such as red and green, will be carried to the petals. So they're a little bit different. Communicating ideas. Why do we share results? For the general knowledge of everyone. How do we share results? They need to be peer-reviewed. They're going to be looked at by other experts in the field, by other scientists, and then they're published. Bias. Showing favor or preference for or against an idea, person, place, or thing. Usually considered to be unfair. Meaning bias is usually considered to be unfair. And there is a statistical bias, a mathematical bias, and one of the things that helps us avoid that type of bias is having large sample groups. And that's it.